In a world full of faces, few dare to see what's hidden inside. Welcome to BlackInside USA, where every story has a shadow and a lesson. She stood before the jet, ready to fly into the unknown, but one look stopped her heart. In that moment, duty met destiny, and the storm that followed would test everything she believed in. She stood before the jet, the wind brushing across her face like a whisper from the sky. Lieutenant Emma Cole had dreamed of this moment since childhood, the day she would command her own mission. The steel wings of her fighter reflected the dying light of sunset, glowing like fire against the sea. Everyone on the deck moved with urgency, cables snapping, engines humming, voices echoing through the carrier. But Emma stood still, eyes fixed on the horizon. She had faced storms before, but this mission felt different. It wasn't just another flight. It was the one that could change her life or end it. "Cole, 10 minutes to launch," her commander shouted from the deck. She nodded, her heartbeat steady, though her chest felt heavy. Behind her goggles and calm face, 1,000 thoughts raced, memories of home, her late father's words, and the letter she'd written that morning but never sent. Her father, once a decorated pilot, had told her, "Courage isn't about flying into danger. It's about knowing when to rise above it." As she walked toward the jet, she noticed someone running toward her. A familiar voice called out, "Emma." Wait, it was Marcus, her closest friend, her flight technician, and the only one who truly understood her silence. He was out of breath, his face tense. "You're flying too soon. The weather radar's unstable, and they're not telling you everything." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated, glancing around. "There's interference in the signal. The jet's navigation system isn't responding. They said they'd fix it, but..." Before he could finish, the commander's voice thundered through the intercom, "Lieutenant Cole, prepare for immediate takeoff." Emma looked at Marcus, his eyes full of worry, hers full of resolve. "I'll be fine," she said quietly. "You know I can handle it." He shook his head. "It's not the storm I'm worried about." Their eyes met, and in that moment, time seemed to freeze. The world around them faded, the roar of the engines, the shouting of the crew, the rush of the waves, everything dissolved into silence. One look, that's all it took. That single glance spoke more than 1,000 words. It was fear, it was love, it was the truth neither had ever said aloud. Marcus took a step closer. "If anything happens up there..." "Don't say it," she interrupted softly. "Nothing's going to happen." He forced a faint smile. "You always say that." The intercom called again, more urgent this time. She turned toward the jet, climbed the ladder, and slid into the cockpit. The smell of metal and jet fuel filled the air, a smell that usually gave her strength, but today it felt heavier. As the engines began to roar, Marcus raised his hand, not in salute, but in a silent plea, "Come back." She nodded once, her eyes locked on his, and whispered into the mic, "See you after sunset." The deck lights flashed green. The catapult launched. The jet shot forward, steel against sky, heart against fate. As the carrier faded below her, she whispered to herself, "This is it." But deep down, she couldn't shake that one look, the one that changed everything. The jet sliced through the sky, leaving behind a silver trail that shimmered in the fading sunlight. Emma's hands gripped the control stick tightly. The hum of the engines was familiar, steady, almost comforting. But the echo of Marcus's words wouldn't leave her mind. "There's interference in the signal." She checked the navigation system. For a moment, everything looked fine. Coordinates matched, altitude stable, comms clear. But then, a flicker, a small red light blinked on the console. Static whispered in her headset. Emma frowned. "Command, this is Falcon 1. I've got signal distortion on my nav display. Please confirm." Silence. Then, a burst of noise, like the storm itself had spoken. She tried again. "Command, do you read?" Still nothing. Only the sound of her heartbeat and the low growl of the jet engines. She glanced at the radar. Static lines danced across the screen. The system was losing calibration. Her location data blurred. She was flying into an unknown zone. "Stay calm," she told herself. "You've trained for worse." But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, Marcus was right. The horizon ahead was no longer golden calm. The sky was changing, fast. Thick gray clouds rolled in like waves of smoke. Lightning flashed in the distance, and the sea below churned violently. Emma's breathing quickened. Not good. She switched to manual control and angled the jet away from the storm's eye. But the wind was relentless. It pushed back with force, tossing her off balance. Then, through the static, she heard something, faint, broken, but real. Quote dot dot dot, Emma, do you copy? Her heart leapt. Marcus, I hear you. Signal's unstable but I'm here. Emma, listen to me. His voice cracked through the static. You're flying into the storm's core. Turn east, now. I can't. Systems are jammed. Emma, your life. The transmission cut off. Lightning struck nearby, the flash blinding her momentarily. The cockpit rattled, alarms blaring. Emma's knuckles turned white as she fought the controls. The sky around her was chaos, dark clouds twisting like giants, rain hammering the glass, and every second pulling her deeper into uncertainty. She remembered her father's words again, courage isn't flying into danger. It's knowing when to rise above it. And right then, she realized this wasn't about bravery. It was about faith, faith in herself, and in the one who believed in her more than anyone else. She closed her eyes for a second, steadying her breath. Okay, she whispered, let's find the light. Reopening her eyes, she saw something faint, a flicker on her radar. Not a reading, but a reflection. A path through the clouds, narrow but visible. She turned the jet, forcing the wings against the storm's pole. Alarms screamed, but she ignored them. Wind tore at her plane. Lightning struck the wings, yet she held on. Her voice cracked as she spoke into the calm again. Marcus, if you can hear me, I'm not giving up. Not today. She guided the jet through the narrow streak of light, every second feeling like a battle between control and chaos. The turbulence was brutal, shaking her body, the cockpit, even her resolve. Then, just when she thought the storm would swallow her whole, it broke. The clouds parted suddenly, and before her spread a breathtaking sight. The sky, painted in gold and crimson, stretched endlessly over a calm, glimmering ocean. Tears filled her eyes. It felt like the heavens themselves had opened for her. She smiled faintly. I made it. Then her comms crackled again. Emma, it's Marcus. I've got your signal. Are you all right? She laughed softly, a sound of pure relief. You won't believe this, Marcus. I think the storm just showed me something. What? That fear isn't the enemy. Silence is. I almost lost myself up there. Marcus chuckled with shaky breath. You're crazy, Cole, but I'm glad you're still my kind of crazy. She smiled, gazing at the horizon. You always knew I'd come back. He replied, I never doubted it. I just wanted you to believe it too. Emma looked out the window, the world calm again, the sky endless. But in her heart, something new had taken flight, courage mixed with peace. As she guided the jet back toward the carrier, the ocean below sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars. The storm had tried to break her, but instead, it had taught her who she truly was. The sun was already sinking low again when Emma's jet came into view over the carrier. The air deck crew stood by, their helmets tilted upward, eyes tracing the silver bird returning from the storm. Inside the control tower, Marcus leaned over the radar screen. His heart raced as he saw the blinking signal reappear. Falcon 1 has visual, he said, his voice shaking. The commander, stern as always, allowed himself a small nod. She made it. Marcus didn't wait for permission. He ran. Down the metal stairs, across the echoing corridors, through the wind and salt and engine fumes until he reached the deck. He could barely see straight, but he didn't care. The jet touched down with a screech of metal and sparks, the landing rough but steady. It slowed, skidding slightly before stopping. The canopy lifted slowly, and there she was. Emma Cole, alive. She took off her helmet, her hair damp from sweat and mist, her eyes bright with exhaustion and something else. Peace. The crew clapped as she stepped down the ladder. She smiled faintly but kept walking, her gaze fixed on one person. Marcus stood a few feet away, breathless, eyes wet though he tried to hide it. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise around them faded again, replaced by the soft rhythm of the sea. Then she said quietly, you were right. He frowned. About what? The interference, the storm, everything. Marcus shook his head. No, you were right, to fly anyway. I just didn't want to lose you. Emma's voice softened. You didn't. The storm tried, but it failed. He let out a shaky laugh. You're unbelievable, Cole. Maybe, she said, smiling, but you still came running. He shrugged, looking down. Someone had to make sure the sky didn't steal you from us. She stepped closer, resting a gloved hand on his shoulder. Marcus, it almost did. But then I remembered that look you gave me before I left, like you were seeing something I couldn't. And it kept me going. He looked at her, surprise mixing with relief. What did you see up there? Emma turned toward the horizon. The last light of the sun bathed her face in gold. I saw the storm for what it was, a mirror. It showed me everything I feared: losing control, losing people I care about, losing myself. And when I stopped fighting it, it let me through. She paused, then looked back at him. I realized courage isn't the absence of fear. It's knowing someone believes in you even when you don't. Marcus's throat tightened. And you think that someone was me? She smiled, eyes glistening. I don't think, I know. For a long moment, the deck was silent except for the hum of the engines cooling behind them. The storm clouds far away were fading into the distance, replaced by stars. The commander's voice echoed from the tower. Good work, Lieutenant. Debrief in 10. Emma nodded without looking away from Marcus. Tell them I'll be there. He grinned. You always have to be dramatic, don't you? She laughed softly. It's the only way the sky listens. They stood side by side, watching the sun melt into the horizon, no words needed. Just peace. For the first time, Emma didn't feel like she was chasing the sky. She was part of it. That night, after the debrief, Emma returned to her small cabin. On her desk lay the letter she'd written before takeoff, the one she never sent. She sat down, unfolding it gently. It read, Dear Dad, you always said courage is knowing when to rise above the storm. I think I finally understand that now. Today I faced one, not just in the sky, but inside me. And I didn't win by fighting, I won by believing. You'd be proud of the people I have beside me. One of them reminded me what faith looks like, not in the mission, but in the heart. Maybe that's what flying is really about. Tomorrow, we take off again. But tonight, I'm not afraid of the sky anymore. Your daughter, Emma. She smiled faintly, folded the letter, and placed it beside her flight badge. Outside, the ocean was calm. The stars stretched across the endless night like tiny sparks of hope. Marcus passed by her door, saw the light still on, and hesitated for a moment before softly knocking. Still awake, Cole, she turned, smiling, just saying good night to an old friend. He raised an eyebrow. Your jet. She shook her head gently. The sky. Marcus chuckled, stepping closer. And what did it say? Emma looked out the window, her reflection blending with the moonlight. It said, I finally belong. And as the carrier sailed through the calm waters under a peaceful night sky, Emma felt a quiet certainty settle inside her, that no matter how far she flew, she'd never truly be alone again. Thanks for watching BlackInside USA, where every ending starts a new story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next story might just change your mind.